Good morning everyone and welcome to our sunrise safari from, like I said, a rather damp, wet Djuma game reserve. We had an incredible storm last night. There was thunder, there was lightning, it was all happening and it was really quite wonderful to have because we needed it desperately. Now my name is Tristan and on camera today I've got Senzo and it is, like I say, a dreary day, but we already have a lead thanks to all of you at home that sent us screenshots of our mystery animal that was walking on the other side of the dam. So remember that anybody else, you can participate as well on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or on the YouTube chat, even if you want to ask questions or say hello or anything like that. But we are going to try and follow up on our mystery animal and see what it was, and at least see what tracks it is. It could have been a hyena, it could have been a leopard, who's to say, but we are going to go check in that area. I think this morning it's going to be a tough morning of game viewing, given that we not only have had a lot of rain which has washed these roads of any tracks from last night, but it is cold, it is windy, and that is not great conditions for a lot of our animals. So if any lead we can get is a good one, then we're going to try and check around. But it's going to be really interesting, besides the animals, to go and just check what's happened last night and what pans are filled up, if any. I see the roads are already quite dry given the amount of rain that we had. It really lashed down from about 12 to 1:30. So we're going to just check around some of the pans and see what's actually around and what's going on. It's just nice to have that smell of fresh rain in the air. I know it's one of those things we haven't smelt in about 6 months, since it was really kind of rained like it did last night. The best part about last night was the light show that we had. Now there's something about African thunderstorms, whether that be in the Masai Mara, South Africa, it's just the absolute sheer amount of lightning that we get. It is phenomenal. We had big bolts of lightning crashing down on every side, and I remember about sort of 8:30, 9, it was right overhead, and on quarantine when I drove back to Inga's, there was just this incredible light show of just bolts coming down from every direction. It really was quite special and quite beautiful, so it was well worth just sitting and taking a moment to have a little look and then carry on. And then the storm really only arrived much later. It kind of went past us and then came back again. Cheryl, you raise a valid point, something that I hadn't thought about this morning. Just kidding. So I've already discussed this ad nauseum with Lou. We've been going around trying to work out how much rain was had, but Cheryl, I would say yes, at this stage it might be a victory. We don't want to celebrate too early. Don't want it to be a premature case of us celebrating and we're wrong, because the clarifying thing was that it had to be 20 mils of rain and considered a proper rainstorm for us to have even accepted it in any way. And so we're just waiting back on how much rain actually fell, and then we will go from there. But the thing is that we did have our first big thunderstorm on the 27th, which at least is close enough. Well, it was the 27th that I said, so I think I might have a little win in the bag. We'll have to see. It's being fiercely contested by the rest of the crew, as you can imagine. Nobody really wants to own anybody else apple juice, but I think they're all in for a bit of a surprise today, so we'll see. Now Lou in my ear has been chuckling and giggling at me all morning because she says that I'm like a chipper bunny, basically, that is on a high after the fact that my date is right, and they all are having a bit of a laugh. But I wanted to show you Gari Dam, just because even though we had quite a bit of rain last night, it did come down. There was a lot of sort of noise of rain. You can see Gari Dam is still pretty dry. It's not really affected too much after the dryness of the last 6 months. Even that amount of rain is going to be soaked into the soil so quickly, because there's been so little, that dams like this have not filled at all. There will be no sort of filling up of a dam like this unless we get sustained rain for a number of days. So it's still going to be a while until Gari Dam actually comes right and is able to actually fill up and become the big dam that it once was. But at least it's a start now. This will just top up the water table slightly, and hopefully from now on every rain we get will just add towards this dam itself. So not good just yet, but we'll get enough at some point. But while I go and check for mystery creature that was on the side of the dam wall, it's not just myself out here, it is also James Henry, who, welcome back from leave, James. I haven't seen you since you got back. I hope you've had a wonderful time, and let's see what he's got to say.
And everyone again, yes. There is the sun. It is the same sun that you've been looking at with Tristan, but this time from the perspective of the Masai Mara here in southwestern Kenya. My name is James Henry. On camera today we have got Fergus. saluting Clark. Wonderful. I've never seen that before. That is a first for me and possibly for you too.
Man these days.
Please do talk to us using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and also, of course, the YouTube chat stream, and whatever stream you happen to be watching us on will have some kind of commenting, chatting section on it. Well, you can use that. We'll do our best to answer any questions or address any comments that you might have. Good, that's all I have to tell you. Now, our plan from today is to go round towards the sort of Rhino, I think it's called the Rhino River Bridge, and then cross that and see if we can't pick up on the Sausage Tree Pride as we go. I'm not sure whether we will be successful with the Sausage Pride or not, but we may or may not. I did not manage to find them yesterday. That was something to do with the rain and something to do with quite a lot of incompetence, I guess. There are one or two wildebeest lurking around still in this area, and it leaves me wondering whether or not they are here permanently or if they are going to go south. Hello, somebody with the name Stickless Beast, is that correct?
Decadent.
Decadent Beast, not Stickless. Hello, Decadent Beast. You say this is your first time with us and that you're very excited. Well, I am even more excited to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. Yes, we certainly don't know what we're going to find today. We'll explore, and hopefully it will be very exciting indeed. The first thing I'm going to show you, Decadent Beast, is those animals sitting on the edge of the escarpment. They're just about to head down into the forests. And I think they're probably buffalo. They are indeed buffalo. And I think during the heat of the day, which in this part of the world at the moment is not very hot, they'll probably head into those trees for the shade. They've been up on the escarpment for the evening, and I think many animals go up the escarpment during the course of the night in order to avoid the attentions of the predators, which for some reason seem not to want to go chasing about on the hillsides during the night time, possibly because it's difficult to chase things on hillsides. You'd think, therefore, that it was difficult to run away from things on hillsides as well, but you know who can understand the machinations of what predators think and do not think in this area. This, of course, the domain of the Angama Pride, and that Angama Lodge sitting on top of the hill there, possibly one of the most perfectly placed lodges in all the world. Let's have one last look at the sun, and then we're going to continue down the low escarpment. There we go. Beautiful. Now, we're going to go across back to South Africa. I believe that Tristan won the rain bet. I'd love to know how much rain there was, because for me, unless it's been 20 millimeters, you cannot say that you have won the bet just yet. See what I did there, Fergus?
James is being fed information via the wire that it needed to be 20 millimeters, but let's see. Well, I would also love to know how much rain we've got, because either way, the amount of rain that fell, as much as it's made things wet, there's really not many puddles around, and so it just goes to show how dry it was. Now, we found a track which I think is for our mystery animal on the dam cam, so it goes off on my right hand side here. It goes down towards the dam. I'm not sure which way this animal was moving, but it is the only track that I can find, which is in the middle of the spotlights, and you can see how difficult tracking now becomes. That just looks like a smudge in the sand, basically, and that's because the road, after being rained on, is almost compacted. There's no loose soil, and so that is a track for a hyena, but it's just a very obscured track. It's almost not visible, and in fact I missed it the first time I came this way, but it is definitely for a hyena. So I think that's what the mystery animal was that was walking around on the edge. It's definitely got claws on the front there, which we wouldn't see from a leopard, and it goes kind of towards this big marula tree and towards the lodge itself. So I'm just going to go around, check Gallego Pan, see if there isn't any other signs of this animal, and maybe I might have just got only these tracks here, but I don't see any other sign of footprints anywhere here that could indicate a different animal. So I think that must be the mystery animal, must have been a hyena walking around in this general vicinity. It's difficult from the dam cam perspective. I was having a look at the photos earlier just to try and see if I could identify it from there, but I can see, you guys, why it's difficult to see what it is, because it's really, when it's far away like this, the shape becomes very hard to see. And so, you know, hyena and leopard would have quite distinctive shapes if it was much closer to the camera, but given it's sort of distance and how far away it was, it makes it a lot harder to be able to actually see what it was. Now I've still got my spotlights out, which is the first time in quite a number of days that I've had to use a spotlight in the morning, and it's because it's still very dark. We've got a low-lying bank of cloud, which is just the sort of after effect of this rain. Hopefully this will clear up. If we can get this to clear up and a bit of sunshine to break, the transformation of this bush is going to be absolutely wonderful. We're going to get a situation where green grass is going to start sprouting. We're going to have little buds all over the trees. Little leaves are going to start growing on all these dry, dead bush willows, and it's going to just be this quick turnaround from dry dust to beautiful lush green bush, which is, well, probably a sight for sore eyes. I absolutely love that change. It's not ideal from a game viewing perspective. It becomes harder for us to be able to find certain animals, and the thicker the bush gets, the harder it is to spot things, but it's just that sort of beauty of it going from brown and dry to bright green and lush is just phenomenal. Now hold on, Senzo, it's going to be a bit rough up here after the rain. There will have been a bit of extra erosion that's taken place, and so sometimes this little section, as you can see, is basically like a roller coaster. You go around and kind of bob your head as you go. Feel like I'm at a concert when I go up there. Now I just want to slowly but surely check around. The spotlight now is starting to become a bit difficult to use. It's at that time where we have this dingy light, so I just want to use it for probably a little bit longer just to see if I can get eye shine, because things like lion and leopard, even if you have seen them kind of out and about and you see their coloration, you would think they would stand out against a dark soil from the rain, but it's actually quite interesting how when it's been raining, their coat almost goes a little bit darker from being wet, and it becomes quite difficult to actually see them. So the light will just help me pick up a bit of eye reflection as we go along, if there are any of those guys around. Also hyenas and various other predators will also disappear quite quickly into this sort of dingy light. Now the problem is I can't really check Galago Pan because there are guests still in camp. They haven't come out yet, so they're still having a little lion, and I suppose after a storm like that I would imagine there will be a couple guests that will have a lion, because it would have kept everybody awake. It certainly woke me up at 12, and it raged on until well after 2 o'clock, so it was quite a lengthy affair to listen to. And I'm sure if some people who have not experienced African thunderstorms before might have been a little nervous at the rate of the wind and the frequency of the lightning and the sound that a thunderstorm makes out here. It really is quite something. Well, that's interesting. Now Taylor McCurdy, I believe, is also going to be joining us this morning, which is wonderful news. Hopefully she's going to have a beautiful day, and I believe she has a beautiful scene unfolding.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sure you all slept well, and hopefully some of you are just waking up like us. Now, my name is Taylor, and on camera with me today is Manu, and we are driving around. I think I've just seen a new bird. Can you see that one that just landed in that tree? Luckily for us, there's not too many trees out and about, but there's bright, there we go, just on the right-hand side of the tree, there's a big black and white bird sitting in there. Are you a black and white casque hornbill? Because I have not seen one of you yet, and you did have a big casque on the top of your bill. Now, it's of course very, very difficult because it is sitting on those branches. But with that big white band across the body, I think it just might be. I'm just trying to think. I don't have my massive Africa or Birds of Africa book, but I might have a little pocket guard. Shall we try and fish it out of my camera box and see if we can have a look? Isn't that a great way to start the morning, possibly with a new bird species for me? And I don't think it's an easy one to get on camera. I wonder how many times, but before I even do that, let me try and confirm it. I've got to find it in the book here. H hornbill. 92 is the page we need to go to. Is it? I think that it is indeed, because they have a very white rump. And that's exactly what we can see over there on the right-hand side of the screen. You can just see it moving around every now and then. Very, very cool. So there we go, a new bird I can add to my Mara list, and just, well, it's a lifer for me. I've always wanted to see them. I just wish it would come and sit out in the open for all of us. Wouldn't that be nice, if we could get a decent look at it? But now, you know, if you don't see the beak and the head of the bird, if you find yourself looking at a black and white bird that's got... Oh, listen, it's calling. That's the zebra now going whoop, 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 whoop. But that rah, 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 it's almost like a toned down trumpeter hornbill call, because a trumpeter hornbill sounds like a baby screeching. It's calling again. And this is sort of more pleasant. This would not wake me up first thing in the morning. This was actually quite a subtle call. It's really beautiful. That's really nice. I've never heard them call either. So maybe we're going to have a day of firsts today. You can also hear the Birchall's cuckoos. There it goes. There, now you can see that it is a black and white casque hornbill. Awesome. That's amazing. Look at all that white. Goodness gracious, you won't be missing that bird. It stands out like a sore thumb against the green canopy. Wonderful. But what I'll do is I shall show you a picture of it, though. If you have a look here. Let me try to hold it up. So, that one. Beautiful. Well, hopefully we'll get to see it up close next time. But that's okay. That was a good enough view for the first time. Now, NASCAR, you're wondering if we get blue or red hornbills. I'm just going to go to the next page over here. Blue or red hornbills. Red or yellow hornbills. We do. We get the eastern yellow-billed hornbill, which looks slightly different to the southern yellow-billed hornbill. Not too much different. So it's a very dark sort of eye. And it almost looks like it has a stripe, a grayish-black stripe going past its eye. And then the bottom left of the page, you'll be able to see the red-billed hornbill. I'm not sure if it's, maybe it's the same species. I have seen it looks almost exactly the same as the southern red-billed hornbill. Whether it's the southern, maybe it's the eastern as well. They're all fairly similar to one another. That was a great start to the morning, adding a new bird list. Now, for those of you who have just tuned in, this is live, this is interactive, this is happening right now. So you can chat to us. Hashtag Safari Live. Or, what else can you do? You can use the YouTube chat too. That is also acceptable. So send on your questions. Perhaps let us know what number bird that was for some of you. I know it wasn't the clearest of clear views, but sometimes the birds don't behave like we want them to. Actually, most of the time the birds don't behave. But my plan for this morning is to try and find the hungry Angama pride, because I've tried to go and see them every single day. Now, it's apparently that bird was number 32 for Gina. Congratulations, well done. Slowly climbing up the list there. So we spent almost every drive, barring yesterday, because I didn't go on a game drive yesterday afternoon, with the Angamas, or trying to find them at least. And they're hungry. They haven't eaten since, well, their last big meal they had was on Friday morning. Didn't even know what the day is today. Wednesday, I think. It is Wednesday. And then, look, Manu said to me, it looked like they maybe caught something small when they saw them yesterday, but nothing particularly big. So I'm sure they're still searching for a decent meal. But let's very quickly jump back into James's car, where he's got a silhouetted animal against the sky.
Well, it's now just come around, unfortunately, away from the light. Well, it's not unfortunate. The silhouette has turned into a proper picture of an impala ram. But I think much more interestingly, and that is not to take away from the glory and magnificence of the impala Epsilurus melampus, but next to us on the right-hand side, we have got two oribi. There is one who just seems to be biting his nether regions, which is not very nice if you're on television. Please stop doing that. There we are. And there's his wife. Now, watch carefully what they're eating. They're picking out the leaves, so they're browsing off a very specific plant, and I don't know what it is, but it's a forb of some kind. In other words, a sort of unidentified herbaceous plant, as opposed to an unidentified grass, or that could be a grass species, and then eating the seeds, which of course are very rich. Now, an animal of this size, probably about twice the size of a steenbok, which most of you will be used to seeing at a place like Djuma, is almost universally a concentrate feeder. And that means that they must be quite selective about what they eat. They cannot go and eat bad rubbish. like, say, a buffalo or a zebra can. Because they're much smaller, they have a much higher metabolic rate, and therefore the quality of the food that they eat must be that much higher. I'm just going to sneak forward. Unfortunately, these cars are not the quietest, and, well, they've been known to put braver animals to flight, so we'll just try and ease forward. And try not to give them a scare. There we go. Mrs. is now being very confiding, but Mr. not particularly brave. There we are. Now, we don't spend a lot of time with Oribi on account of the fact they're not very common, and they don't often stand out here in the open. And secondly, of course, they also spend quite a lot of time in very long grass, so it's quite difficult to see them. And I suppose the most notable thing about their faces would be that gland just underneath the ear. She's now eating grasses, but she's picking off just the little seed inflorescences. Very rich in fats, of course, 1 or 2 proteins. And she will get all the carbohydrate, of course, she needs from the leaves that she eats, but that's not the limiting nutrient. The limiting macronutrients, if you happen to be a herbivore, are, of course, fats and proteins. And that's why she'll go for the seeds. Now, John Michael, you're asking if the seeds will be damaged in digestion or if they'll sort of pass through and be fertilized into growth. No, I think they'll almost certainly be destroyed. The ruminatory process, so in other words, she's going to swallow those, she's going to regurgitate them back into her mouth when her rumen is full, so she'll go and find a shady spot, regurgitate them into her mouth and absolutely masticate them, so she will really smash them to pieces in her teeth, and what that will do is release the nutrients. It's very unlike a marula fruit, for example, passing almost untouched through an elephant's digestive system and then being fertilized by the dung and germinating. It's very unlike that. So almost certainly those seeds will be destroyed. I suppose 1 or 2 of them might make it through, but the very process of rumination will destroy them almost certainly. Righty, we're going to carry on, try and continue our search for the sausage tree pride. While we do that, Tristan apparently is still deeply mysteriously on the trail of a deeply mysterious animal. How mysterious? Mystery. Who knows? No idea.
Now, James, the deeply mysterious animal, this mystery has been solved. It is, I'm sure, a hyena, given that that is the only tracks that I found whatsoever. But that's not to say that other animals didn't walk there. If you have a look at this road, now this is an example of why after rain things can be very difficult. This road in front of us is probably one of the busiest roads that we have on Djuma in terms of not only vehicle traffic, because it links straight to Buffelshoek, it's a quite direct route to Buffelshoek, but also animal wise. We often find tracks all over this road, and I was saying to Senzo this morning that it is looking seriously eerie out here because there is not a single track anywhere. You can see the roads are smooth and pitted with little raindrops. There's a little bit of a tire mark here and there, but most of it's been washed away, and there's not even footprints for animals. I can't find tracks at all, so it seems as though between the rain and now, which is not very long, I suppose, it's only been about 3 hours, there's been very little movement, so most of the animals must be hunkered down somewhere just trying to stay warm in this cold weather. But it also shows you why finding animals after big storms like that can sometimes be quite tough. Even the things that have walked here, so the soft padded animals like lion, leopard, hyena, those kind of things, their tracks are almost nondescript, as we saw from that track earlier by the dam. And even here, I was looking now, there was one track for hyena that crossed during the rain from Buffelshoek to us, and it is pretty much non-existent. Once it goes from a very soft sand section onto this kind of part of the road, you can't even make it out at all. I tried with lights and everything like that. It's just a smoothish section, and it really takes the best trackers to be able to track in weather like this and in conditions like this. So it's going to be an interesting morning. The good thing though is that once something does move on soil like this and wet roads like this, then typically they actually will leave sort of some sort of break in those raindrops, and we should be able to see big things like elephant tracks or buffalo tracks or anything like that. Those will be quite easy to spot. The hard edged hoofed animals, they will all make a very clean mark on the road. It's just that the cats become quite difficult in all of this. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to slowly kind of head, I think, towards Aubrey's, check the hyena den, and then from there I'm going to go down towards our southern boundary. I've checked Buffelshoek boundary to the north. Nothing that I can see coming south. I can't see any sign of the Nkahuma pride moving in this direction. I know some of you have asked me privately on Twitter if I've seen any sign of the Nkahumas or how the lioness with the injury is doing. Really not sure. We haven't seen them for quite some time. They've been up in the north for over a week now, about a week I would say, and so they've been hunting a herd of buffalo there on the southern Manyaneti boundary and the northern Buffelshoek boundary. Apparently the last I heard she was moving okay. I know there was a report somewhere on Facebook that she was limping and that she was in bad condition, but she actually, from what I've heard from Tax and Rex, who have been seeing her pretty much every day since that injury, they say that she's moving okay and that just the whole pride is looking quite thin because they're struggling to find enough food for all of them. But with buffalo around, hopefully they'll all get a buffalo and very quickly things will get sorted. Now our first animal of the morning, who is about to move away from us, of course, as they do, is male impala that is looking rather alert, and I would imagine in conditions like we're seeing now that it's a little dark, a little windy, and after the rain it must have been a really torrid night for anything that gets preyed upon, because the predators would have used last night to their advantage. Even though they don't like rain, conditions like what we had even in the start of the evening when there was lightning and there was wind and there was thunder, it is the best conditions for predators to hunt in. Can you imagine how scary it must be as this impala who's sitting there? You can see it's quite twitchy already, and we're sitting in the dark, and all of a sudden there's this flash of light and you see maybe a predator somewhere close by, so something like a leopard, then it goes dark again, and then all of a sudden there's a flash of light and there's something somewhere else. It must just be the most scary thing in the world, and these guys have a really tough time in conditions like this. So I would imagine a number of these individuals may have perished in last night's events, and that's why this guy is looking so jumpy. You can see every time there's a sort of rustle or there's some sort of movement, my voice even, he gets a little bit kind of twitchy and stops and looks at us and just checks to make sure that he's not going to be hunted as we are sitting here. Also, the interesting thing is that he's by himself. Now, generally impalas will form groups together, even males. They'll try and form bachelor groups, and they'll try and make sure that they stay safe by using each other's eyes and ears. In this case, this impala is all on his own, and it's going to be a tough life for an impala when he's by himself. He's going to have a situation where there's going to be a number of different predators that will go after him. Now, John, you were wondering if rain will cause the predators to hunt. Well, not so much the rain. The rain is not really ideal for them, although I have seen predators hunting in the rain. It's more the dark conditions that rain brings, particularly at night. You'll find that this dark cloud layer means that out here there is no available light, there's no moonlight, no starlight, and so these animals really struggle to see. I was out last night when I said I was watching the lightning, and I promise you cannot make out a thing in the dark. Obviously their eyes and their senses are a little bit more well developed than ours, but the problem is the flashes of lightning but kind of brighten up, and that causes your eyes to not adjust to the darkness as well. So if it was just a dark night, no lightning, you'd find your eyes will start to adjust a little bit better and you'll be able to start making out a bit of movement in the distance. But when it has those bright flashes, you kind of go from, it's like going in from a dark room, turning on the lights and then turning it off again. You just can't make out anything, and so it's really tough when we get these thunderstorms. The other thing about a thunderstorm is that if it rains, the rain deadens the scent of any predator in the area because it's not wafting around with the water. There's also a lot of noise from rain, so it means that predators can move without being heard, and well then of course it's difficult to see. If you've ever walked in a rainstorm and you know there's rain lashing you in the eyes, you can't really see what's going on very well, and so it becomes quite difficult for these antelope. I really do feel sorry for them on nights like last night, and even mornings like this, these overcast dark mornings. You'll find predators, if they didn't catch anything last night, will still be fairly active hunting in this kind of weather. So he's going to have to be very careful and very aware of its surroundings to make sure that it stays alive. Like I said, it's very unusual to have an impala like this by himself. Most of the time, even these males will form bachelor groupings, or they'll be with a herd of females. It's very, very unique to see this. So hopefully our impala will stay safe. He's busy just kind of walking southwards. You best be careful where he goes though, and make sure that he looks. And there we go, off he goes trotting. Now you might also have noticed that his coat was a lot puffier than what we normally see from our impalas. Our impalas normally look as though they've been to the salon and they've been combed and slicked, and they've kind of got their perfect skin and coat pattern. But when they're cold like this, you'll find that the coat looks a little bit more rough and a bit more puffy, and that's all just to try and stay warm. You can see we're wrapped up in lots of jerseys and gloves and all kinds of other things, and the impalas don't have that advantage to go put on a little fleece jersey, but instead what they do is they just erect their fur, and that fur then traps air against the body, and it acts like an insulating layer, almost like a jersey, and they then are able to warm themselves up and stay warm in these cooler conditions. Interesting though, it's this time of the year where we would have had a number of birds nesting, and there would have been some deaths last night for sure. There would have been nests that would have been broken, and the other thing is that if there's any birds that have hatched already, cold snap like this, so a change from very warm temperature yesterday afternoon was a very hot, and then it goes to cold like this straight away. Small little chicks and things like that, if they're not tended to properly by the adults, would have died. So it would have been a rough night for a lot of different animals last night, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few, like I say, carcasses around, and even small dead birds and baby animals that could potentially have been born in the last little bit. But at least now I'm not the only one out here. I can hear all the game drive vehicles are slowly but surely starting to come out now. So hopefully they'll give us a hand and they'll be able to help us with our endeavors this morning. It's a little bit too early to be seeing any budding taking place or any leafing or anything like that coming out. We'll only see that probably in the next couple of days and as soon as the sun comes out. While it's still like this, we won't see too much change in the bush, but it'll be amazing once the sun comes out. You'll be surprised just how quickly all of this is going to change from this dry, desolate kind of wasteland to a very busy, very lush place. Ah, yes, Snazzy, you are asking whether we'll learn a bit more about African bush botany, and when it starts to green up a little bit, most certainly we will. Also, don't forget we're going to be going into a time now where we're going to be doing a lot more bushwalks, and so we're going to have guys out on foot, and that's the best way to be doing botany. From a vehicle is still good and you can see a lot of what goes on, but when you're on a walk, it's really the best thing because you can be tactile with it. You can show branches, show little buds, show all the different things that goes on within a tree. And so yes, bush botany will become a big theme with over the next probably 6 months as we go through our summer, or spring, summer, and even into the sort of start of winter when there's lots going on. The other thing about the trees, and the reason why we'll focus on them a lot more, is because of the amount of insects we're going to get on the trees. So we're going to get a situation where these trees, as they grow and then they produce leaves, they just becomes an explosion of insects that are on them, and you'll find ants, you'll find beetles, you'll find caterpillars, moths, butterflies, all kinds of things congregating on bushes now, and that means that we will draw our attention to these things a lot more, and we'll discuss a lot more in depth as to why those trees are being used and the various different uses for them, even for us as humans. So it's definitely going to be a time of plenty now. I'm always excited when it's summer because we have so much more around. It's obviously winter for the big game is much better to see a lot of the animals. It's drier, which means they congregate around water. It's not as thick, so we can see a lot better. But in summer there's just so much more life. We have migratory birds, we have insects, we have trees, we have flowers, we have all kinds of things going on. It just feels like you can take one step and there's life abounding everywhere. In winter, a little bit more sort of dry and drab, a little tougher to be able to kind of have that feeling and get the same sort of sense of mass, or biomass, I suppose is probably the best way to put it, all around you. So it's going to be a really good time, and I'm super excited. I always love, like I say, this time of the year. Also, we're going to get a lot of baby animals, which is nice, so always joyful to watch a lot of the young animals bounding around and playing and birthing brings around its own complications with predators and various other things as they go. Now I'm going to probably start heading southwards now and just go and check to the south of the reserve, and while I do that, I believe James is still on his quest for sausages, and not the breakfast kind.
Now we have come to the bottom of the slope, and we are now making our way towards that bridge I told you about. We came down here on this particular road because we saw two other cars here, which of course is how you track in this place, because you can't actually track, you have to just sort of spot, assuming that they had seen something, but unfortunately they had not. They had seen us and were coming up the other way, and they thought we'd seen a leopard. We hadn't seen a leopard though, had we, Fergus? No, we hadn't. Well, I don't know, maybe Fergus had. He says no, he doesn't think he saw a leopard. Good. Okay. Well, we're nearly at the bottom here. We'll go into the gap and have a look at what's been knocking about in the trees during the course of the evening. You may hear some flapping. Don't worry, that is not the rain, it is our rain cover, which will shortly be replaced. Hopefully, with any luck. Ray is wanting to know, hello Ray, nice to hear from you, which prey animals have got the best hearing? I'm going to say I think most of them have got very good hearing, but basically the old adage that taught to us by the big bad wolf when we learnt about Little Red Riding Hood holds true out here, I think. So basically the bigger your ears are in proportion to your body, the better your hearing. So something like a kudu or a steenbok or a duiker, or I suppose even those oribi, I think are going to have proportionately better hearing than, for example, something like an impala. And that's because they live in thicker bush, and because they live in thicker bush they've got bigger ears, and they can rely less on their ears for defense than, say, or at least their eyes for defense than, say, something like a zebra or wildebeest, which lives in open areas. So the animals that live in closed areas, much more thickly bushed areas, are going to have better hearing than those that don't. So I suppose something like a kudu, bushbuck, Nyala to a certain extent would have better hearing than something like a wildebeest or zebra, but I think it's extremely difficult to say who's got the best hearing. I'm not sure that hearing tests are possible on those animals. You can't sort of say, well, tell me when you don't hear the sound anymore, and they don't live, they don't raise their hooves. It's very difficult to do an experiment like that. So basically, the bigger the ear, the more investment has been made physiologically in the construction of the ear, and therefore possibly the more effective they are, because of course they are used for defense. I hope that answers your question, Ray. Okay, we're now turning off up on towards... I'm sorry, I've missed that. Go again with that, please, Chantal. What's it? Picture breakup. Oh, I'm sorry about the pixelation of our picture. Not sure why that's happening. That's well beyond my understanding. So I do apologize for that. Right, we've turned up on towards the Olololo escarpment again, hopefully going to find the sausage tree pride, and also hopefully going to identify the very beautiful trees that have got these pinkish flowers. There's a vulture while we wait and see. There he is. He too is waiting for better days and wondering why it is that a little while ago he was able to eat 5 or 6 times a day, and now, well, pickings are just a little slimmer than they once were. And that, of course, is because the migratory herds have disappeared from this place. Let's have a little listen to the morning chorus that there is of it here. One Cokie Franklin. Ooh, sounds like an apelus. Choop, 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 choop. Quite a few, actually. White-browed robin chat. Some oxpeckers. A parrot, mayor's parrot. There we go. That metallic sort of squeak. In fact, there is the parrot. I think it's going to be slightly unsighted for you, Fergus. If you zoom out slightly, I'll just go forward. You see this very tall tree in front of us? To the left of that, there's a scraggly tree. There's a parrot in it. There he is. He's just flitting about in there. That's him. There's Mayor's parrot. Good morning. It's always almost incongruous to see parrots out here. You expect them only to be in very tropical areas. And yet there we have a magnificent parrot looking for seeds and fruits to eat, largely seeds of course. And oh, isn't it wonderful to watch them climb with their beaks like that? There are not a lot of birds that will do that. In fact, I can't think of anything other than the parrots that will do that. His lovely yellow head and his yellow shoulders. He's not in the best light, but he's still quite brightly coloured. You can also hear a giant eagle owl calling. Alright, on cue, the parrot has departed. We're going to head across to Taylor, who apparently has got an animal that is just coming home after a long night out.
That's, I think, exactly what's happened here, James. It's just stopped for a little cool down, though, in a wallow that's filled with water at the moment. Now, it's not a particularly big, well, it's a decent size. I would say it's a plunge pool size for a hippopotamus. You know, just sort of popping in. Maybe it lives in this wallow. Maybe it's not even going to go back to the river. Now, the fact that it is in here could mean a number of different things. It could be a female, of course, anything is possible. But my suspicions are that perhaps it's a young bull, and we typically find young bulls occupying, well, the less favoured areas, just because they're not big enough and strong enough to compete with the other males, and maybe they don't want to be compliant in listening to the territorial bulls, and basically the big bulls will say, you can live here, you can live with me in my wonderful river with all my ladies, but you leave the ladies alone. Sometimes the young bulls can't help themselves, and then they get to hiding, and then they have to come and live in places like this. But again, I can't tell from this angle. But looks like it's fantastic in there by all the bubbles that you can see. So to me that says that there's probably a fair amount of feces and urine floating about in there too. So that's somewhere where Manu and I won't be going for a dip, or no one on the Wild Earth team will be going in there, because I can't imagine the types of parasites and things that you'd pick up from that filthy water. It is really quite gross. Now, we're in Angama Pride country here, but whether they're still around, I'm not sure. Wonder where they have disappeared to. Now, they seem to have a loop and a circuit that they like to walk. They spend most of their time around their favourite drainage line, the Lugga, and then they'll move west towards the escarpment and do a quick loop and hug all the tree lines and come back. But I haven't seen any gatherings of cars, and I haven't seen any lions yet either. But let's continue with our search. Perhaps they'll be here somewhere. But I'm also not sure. It's a tough one to try and figure out exactly their favourite spots, especially if they've made a kill somewhere that they might not be in their usual place. But we'll keep scanning anyways. I haven't seen, oh, hang on, there's a bird. Just with its tail up in the air, and there's now shouting. Meh, meh. But it's not its normal call, that's its alarm call, the white-browed cuckoo. And you won't believe it, yesterday before we had all the rain, all I could hear was a everywhere. So I think that the myth of the cuckoos coming out before rain and after rain definitely rings true in the Maro Triangle. As it rings true, on the southeast coast of South Africa. I haven't really been able to confirm that sort of myth in Djuma. Might just be a coincidence, of course. At Djuma, I never really see them. Obviously see them when it's raining every now and then, but they aren't as active as the white-browed kukels are here in the Mara and the Birchall's kukels are in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. But probably come out to try and get rid of the damp feathers. But unfortunately, there's no sun for you to warm up. But it was alarming just now, so I wonder what it had seen. Because they're quite ferocious predators themselves, you know, running around along the ground trying to flush out lizards. They'll eat snakes, rodents. They'll eat a variety of different things. You can see they've got a very powerful beak. Come on, sing us a beautiful song, please. Now, James, you're wondering if trumpeter hornbills occur in the Mara. I haven't heard any or seen any yet. I think Jamie may have tried to put some on screen, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was yesterday or the day before. So perhaps they do occur here. I'm just going back to page number 92 to see if they've got trumpeter hornbills in the book. I've seen crowned, though. I haven't seen a trumpeter. We'll have to maybe we can ask Jarms. Again, we haven't had much opportunity to do a lot of birding. My bird list is still only on. We have to add the black and white casque hornbill. So I think I must be on about 40 birds now, 45 birds. I really haven't had a chance to do any birding at all. So it's, you know, just obviously very busy and focusing on other things. Well, it will grow, and maybe I'll see it. But you'll normally see trumpeter hornbills. They love fruit. They love it. It's their favorite thing to eat. So wherever there's big trees that are fruiting along the river lines, particularly from the big fig trees, that's where they'll hang around. I mean, we occasionally see them around Vuyatela Dam back at Djuma, but again, it's a rare sighting. I mean, I've heard the trumpeters at Djuma. In the southern sands, they are everywhere. There's just trumpeter hornbills on every single fig tree and every jackalberry tree that you can think of. I'm just trying to think, this car's coming up this way. I don't think there's any point us going down there. I don't think there's lions that way. We'll have to perhaps go check a different route. Maybe we'll go back this way. Right, James has, if I heard correctly, it sounds like James has found a plant and he's shouting at it. Let's go and see what has caused him to get angry with nature.
I'm not shouting at my plant. I don't know why anyone thought I was shouting at a plant. Shouting at plants is apparently not a very good idea. They don't like it. It is said that if you talk nicely to a plant, it will grow nicely, and if you shout at it and give it hate, so it will die. I don't want you to die, beautiful little plant. Good. I'm glad we've established that. Now, this plant is unidentified to me, but looks very similar to the flowers that we find on Meirua or bush cherry plants down in South Africa, and also quite similar to those found on the Capparis or caper bushes that we find also here and in South Africa. But there are no thorns on this, so I don't think it's a caper bush. It must be related in some way to those Meiruas. It's just very pretty, and it's got that very typical subtle honey-like smell. And so I will try and identify it a little bit later. Isn't it nice? They've just started to come out, and they're all over the place here. And as we go, I suppose, towards what could be described as a spring out here, of course the seasons tend to be very much one with each other, this close to the equator. Well, so the flowers are coming out, and we've got some trees flowering, and just these odd bits of wild flowers popping up on the plains as well. Then in front of us we have got some elephants, and they are grazing around the sort of domain of the sausage tree pride, and so I doubt the sausages are very close to where that lot are. Anyway, that will be revealed when we get closer up towards the hillside. It's a gloriously peaceful morning out here today. No death as far as the eye can see. which of course is quite unusual for this region. We have had a lot of death over the course of the migration season. Let us move along, get a bit closer to those elephants. Hello Benji, you're wondering if the season is the same here as it is in the Mara. We are in the Mara. It's the same season as it is in South Africa as it is here. The answer is yes, I suppose it would be. We are just south of the equator, and so yes, we're getting into slightly longer days. We're going towards the spring, into the summer, much the same way as Djuma is, but the change is not going to be as extreme. And of course the change at, for example, Djuma is nothing like as extreme as it would be I guess down in Cape Town, for example, is the southernmost city in South Africa, and much less extreme than the change that is going on in the northern latitudes. So, you know, I suppose Djuma in terms of Europe and America would fit somewhere around Mexico, I guess. Yeah, probably around Mexico, maybe slightly closer north, maybe slightly further north than Mexico City, but basically just about everything in the United States and most of Western Europe is at a higher latitude, for example, than the areas that we drive around in, and that means that the seasonal changes will be that much greater. Now we have to unfortunately go all the way around this little section here to get to the elephants, but that's okay. Let's see what else we can find here. As we fringe the forest, maybe that leopard that they were looking for earlier will pop out here. And of course, if we were able to A, either drive or B, walk through these areas here, well, I suspect we'd see a lot more in the way of the spotted cat. There are a lot of vultures taking off from somewhere off to the left there and flying off down towards the right, and I'm not sure where it is that they're going. Perhaps they're just heading off towards the river to see what they can find there, but there is definitely a stream of them moving over towards the left. Oh, I've pulled my earpiece out. I think I'm supposed to be linking, but I'm not sure to whom. Fergus, did you copy it? You didn't. Okay, wait, let me just plug myself back in again. No, don't talk yet, Chantal. Ah, Taylor. Taylor has managed to get much closer to some elephants than I did, so let's go across to her.
James, I'm just absolutely flabbergasted at the fact that you saw a bird flying. How unusual. When he's just teasing, of course. But we have a really unusual looking elephant cow. Now, I'm hoping that she turns her head back towards us, because the interesting part is with her tusks. You can see one tusk there. It looks fairly normal, don't you think? And it's actually growing out and coming across her trunk. So it's coming from the left-hand side across to the right. And then her right tusk obviously got the wrong directions when it was growing and has decided to go underneath the trunk. Isn't that incredible? Now, she's very lucky, you know, that it hasn't grown into her trunk or back into her body, because sometimes we see that with antelope, with their horns, unfortunately, as well, just don't go where they're supposed to go and end up drilling straight back into their head. It's very, very sad to see something like that. Let's see how she's to go underneath. I suppose it's not too bad. I don't think it affects her negatively in any way at all. She's still got one tusk which she can use to dig, but I haven't seen any of the elephants since I've been here digging, other than, you know, loosening up in the mud when they're wanting to have a mud wallow. So I thought that was very cool and very unusual, and we like to see, you know, the different ways that tusks grow. Obviously, we've got Fang in South Africa, who is, well, we think she's the matriarch of quite a large herd of elephants that move around between the north and the south of the Sabi sand, and her tusk does a big loop and points back towards her belly. It's quite cool, actually. We haven't seen her for a while, though. And then now we've got this elephant, another interesting elephant character of the Mara Triangle. We've been seeing lots with very long tusks or just one tusk, but this is the strangest formation I've seen so far. Now, can you hear that? There's a very unhappy elephant in the distance, and it's been trumpeting and trumpeting, and I'm trying to figure out why it's trumpeting. Shall we go and figure out together? What do you think, Manu? I don't know if we're going to get to the right spot. There is a There's quite a few elephants around here. We've obviously got the small little satellite party here, and then the rest of the herd seems to be up ahead, and that trumpeting is coming from even further away, because I was looking and I thought, oh, maybe this herd is distressed here, maybe it's a cow that's unhappy with a young bull and trying to chase him out, but they're very relaxed. They haven't reacted, not once, to the sound of that distressing trumpet. So maybe we need to go beyond this herd and just keep following the road. We'll find out maybe they're chasing something. Now, a question from Snazzy. Snazzy, you're wondering, how do the elephants sleep? Do they sleep on the ground, sort of standing or sitting? So it depends. Young elephants, they get very tired. Those legs work very hard from trying to keep up with the adults all the time. So they often take siestas. Whenever the adults will stop and feed in a particular spot, it's not uncommon to see them just flop onto their sides. So they will lay flat on the ground. With the adults, sometimes they do lay down, but it's not necessary that they lay down at all. Can you believe that? They don't need much rest at all, in a couple of hours a day, and it's proven that they don't actually need to physically sleep every single day too. So typically what an elephant will do is, for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, they'll find a nice shady tree during the heat of the day and sort of just stand motionless and just rest. I've just gone off the road. It's luckily there was no obstacles on the way there. So and then what they will also do is sometimes they'll lean up against termite mounds and use it to help obviously stand up, because when you're a big elephant it's quite difficult to get up and down constantly. So the trumpeting is coming from in there. What's that? Something is moving through the grass, and it's moving not like an antelope or a gazelle. Is it a hyena? Oh no! Have we made? It's a hyena. It's many hyena. Woo! Hold on, Manu. Let's go through them. And then my favorite, Snazzy, is the one time that I saw a big elephant bull and he'd stuck his tusks into the side of a bank and was sleeping like that. I thought that was quite nice. So they do a variety of different things, but they don't need much rest at all. It's incredible considering they travel such huge distances on a regular basis. But they're just like, no, it's okay, we can carry on. Oh, there's a road. How fitting. As you can see, two hyena. Maybe it was the hyena that was upsetting the elephants. That wouldn't be a surprise. Let's have a look at the hyenas quickly. I just want to get a good spot for you. No, hyenas, settle. I'm just going to go past this little shrub here. The reason why is because he's going to disappear behind it. Just have a very quick look. Were you not causing stress to elephants? That is not necessary. And slobbering away. Not a very clean hyena. Right. And speaking of hyenas, seeing as though we found ours, well, they seem to be minding their own business at the moment. Tristan is about to go and check what's happening at the hyena den.
I am indeed, Miss McCurdy. I'm going to go and see what is going on at our hyena den, because I had tracks for a hyena going up Weirtella access, so I thought maybe, just maybe, they might have come towards the den. It is quite cold, so I'm not 100% sure the little ones will be out, but at the end of the day it's worth having a little check, and since we had tracks coming in this general direction, it's a good place to go and a good place to kind of have a little look. So I just want to check. Sorry, I was just wanting to see something there, but it was just an impala bounding off into the bush. I thought I had spotted something else like a hyena, but it wasn't. It was just an impala. Now, let's see. The entrance to the den is just up in front here, so we're not far away at all. We're about 2 minutes away. Right, there we go. Oh, little Cokie Franklin. Sorry, not Cokie. What am I saying? Little Shelley's Franklin in front of us. That is running up towards the den. Now, Franklins are often associated around the den sites of hyenas and various other things. You often see them. I don't know why it is. Maybe it's because of the very solid pathways that we have that go to them. They like to be on roads and pathways where they can look out for not only danger, but also find all kinds of little seeds and various other things that are down on the ground. And so you find them regularly around den sites. It's quite interesting. And this is very cool bird, because it's got this call that basically says, "I'll drink your beer." So that's how I always remember it, and it's my favorite call of all the Franklins. It always makes me giggle when I hear it and when they do call. Unfortunately, I haven't heard them calling for quite some time, but now that we're going into the summer months and the breeding season for all these birds, hopefully we will start to actually hear them making quite a bit of noise. As you can see, very busy at work. I feel quite bad if we go any further forward, and because we're going to disturb it, and it seems to have found itself a nice little patch of food there. It's given that it's pecking away with absolute relish. And you can see, look at how good the camouflage is though. When they're in grass like that, I mean, that's not even thick grass. It's grass that is, I mean, it's just in the middle of a road really. It's not thick, dense grass, but yet they blend in so well. And if that bird didn't move, and you had that shot right there, and there was no movement whatsoever, you would really struggle to pick it up. And they have to have amazing camouflage, because these guys are not the most agile flyers, and on top of that, when they nest on the ground, and so they need a place where they can, or a system that they can camouflage and hide away from predators in plain sight. So it's very easy sort of camouflage that they've got, and they've got these kind of flecks and all kinds of other things that's going on. Is it a Shelley's Franklin? No, it's a female Coqui Franklin. I do apologize. I did say Shelley's Franklin earlier, but it's a female Coqui Franklin. Now that it's out properly and I can see it. The female doesn't have the darker head, and actually I can see the male now also coming out. He's more to my left-hand side in the thick grass. I can just see his head bobbing around. But while I've got a little chance to get through, I'm going to go. I don't want to separate the two of them, so we're going to try and just quickly negotiate our Coqui Franklins. Now, I don't know why I said Shelley's Franklin, because Shelley's Franklin's a much larger Franklin. Anyway, the brain is a bit scatty this morning, not enough rest, and after yesterday's debacle in the afternoon, which I will get into a little bit later if we have nothing at the den. Sorry, Mr. Coqui Franklin, off you go. Get into the grass, come on. There we go. Well done, at least listen to us. So yesterday afternoon I went to town and went to go do town trip, which was all wonderful and everything was going swimmingly. I got to see Steph for a little bit, who's arrived back in South Africa after being in Kenya for quite some time, and had a chat to him and did all the things I needed to do. And then on the way back I had a blowout on a dirt road, which was very unpleasant, and the car was all over the place, and luckily I didn't roll or anything like that. But then when I wanted to change the tire, the spare wheel had a lock on it and there was no key for the spare wheel, and I was just stuck on the side of the road until luckily some friends of mine came past, and they have a similar car to what I have, and I was able to use their spare wheel. Now unfortunately, no sign of any hyenas at the den. It's all very quiet. In fact, there doesn't actually even look as though there's been any movement here whatsoever since the rain. If you look at the pathways leading up to the den and that area there's no disturbance. If the hyenas had been here and there'd been a lot of movement of the little ones, you would have found quite a bit of disturbance there, and you can even see the pitting of rain in those darker sections. There's little sort of spots all over the den, so that would have been obliterated by hyenas moving around in this area. So they haven't been back since the rain started, and it was a long shot to come and check at this time of the day. It is still very cold and it is damp, which means that I'm pretty sure those little ones are just sitting inside having a nice morning rest, basically a bed day if you want to call it that, and they're in and they're resting and they're staying nice and warm inside this termitarium. Remember, termitariums hold temperature much better than outside, and so they're able to stay in there, and it probably still is quite warm from yesterday's sun. So best place for a little one to be is inside. Mom is not around as far as I can see. I'm just going to reverse back and go check the other side of the den and just see if there is any sign on that side, but it doesn't look like anything at this stage, and like I say, no real fresh signs of any hyenas that I can see currently. Let's just turn this way. Senzo, you see anything? Nope, Senzo says he can't see anything, and we know Senzo is eagle-eyed Senzo, so if he can't see anything, then I think we're all out of luck for the hyena den. Oh well, worth a try. It's always good to come and check these things and to make 100% sure. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. It's a bit hit and miss hyena dens for us at the moment, and it's because the dens are of 1 or 2 females and they're the lower ranking females. If we had higher ranking females, we'd probably find a lot more activity at the den. Donna, you're asking if the hyena decides to move dens, would she move the den at night? Well, sometimes, it's not a given rule. They sometimes will move them even during the day, but generally yes, at night they go and take them and pick them up. She might have moved dens. Remember that the wild dogs did run here, and maybe the wild dogs caused a bit of a disturbance in this area, and that's why we had a situation that they kind of might have moved. Maybe she's moved her den back to Gallagher Shortcut, or she's found herself a different den. I was pretty sure the other day when we were with the wild dogs in the afternoon, so not in the morning when they'd run past here, but in the afternoon, that the hyena that they chased, we didn't get it on screen, but they chased a hyena which was a big, fairly lightish coloured female, and I have a suspicion that it might have been Gwen that was just resting inside the thickets just south of where we are now. It's not far at all as the crow flies, so maybe, just maybe, she has decided to move her den somewhere else and she's got a different place. We'll have to just see. Time will tell. We'll keep checking, and I know a number of guides have been past here in the last few days. I think Ali was here last night and various other guides have been through here, and none of them have had much luck recently, and given that there's no fresh tracks around that den, of course it has rained and that would obliterate everything that is there. It just seems as though it's a little on the quiet side in that particular section. So oh well, it's still interesting though, it's still worth checking, and like I say, eventually we'll find where they've moved to, if they have moved, or what the situation is. Gwen is a difficult one, and it seems as though when she has young ones she becomes quite elusive rather than very set. It's quite strange, but maybe she went back towards Intima's den on Gallagher Shortcut. I didn't see any tracks on Gallagher Shortcut though when I drove there. It didn't look like there was any fresh signs of hyenas moving on that road either. So I'm a bit of a loss as to where they might be. Maybe she's moved them up into Buffelshoek. It's not far from the Buffelshoek boundary, that den. It's maybe, I'd say, 200 meters from the Buffelshoek boundary. Right, but what I'm going to do now is probably meander my way down towards Treehouse Dam, and then from there I want to head towards Chitwa, because, well, it sounds like there's a spotty surprise on Chitwa that potentially has made a kill this morning. I can't hear very nicely and there's lots of breaking up and lots of static, but from what I could gather was there something about a kill and something about a leopard, but what it is and whether or not there's actually that going on is anyone's guess. But we're going to slowly try and head that direction and see. It's, as I was saying to you, it's really perfect conditions for predators to be hunting and for, you know, kills to take place. So maybe that's what's happened, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but at least it's something to look forward to and something to go and investigate. Whether it's there or not, well, it will still be pleasant to take a turn past Chitwa. Maybe we can go and check the Gymnogene nest, see if there's anything there, and then also just maybe at the dam if there's anything around. Although the dam, I would imagine, will be quite unpleasant this morning given that it's windy. That dam is really very exposed, and so the wind kicks up there and it becomes very choppy and it's difficult to even see the hippos. There's no sun, so the crocs won't be sunning themselves, and birds themselves maybe will just be taking a little bit of shelter. So I don't think the dam's going to be that active, but you never know, maybe there's something lurking around. We'll definitely go and have a little look. And I haven't been to Chitwa at the end of the day for quite some time. The last time I was there was with Tundi, but I didn't really drive around Chitwa much. I literally just went one-eyed pan and back. So I'm going to try and go and check around and just spend a bit of time there. Also, we have to test the new mast a little bit. We haven't really driven too much around Chitwa at the moment, and so it'd be good just to go and test out and see how things are going. Now the route I'll go towards Treehouse Dam is I'll check Impala Plains, because you never know also if Shadow and Cub is around and moving, so they also could be back from yesterday's little sort of jaunt down to Little Gowrie and Hoffman's. But I'm not the only one who's bumbling around and checking around for some of our more predatory species. There is also James Henry in the Masai Mara, who I believe is still on the search for the sausage pride, and hopefully he will have some luck.
Now we've come quite a long way off. There are all the vultures. We had reports of lions in this area. There are vultures there in the tree, which I will show you straight in front of us. There are a whole lot of them. There are a few just to the side of us as well, but there are a whole lot more in the tree up ahead. And I wonder if the lions that we are seeking are not around here. It would be very exciting to find them, especially if they were hunting something. Try to listen for a few alarm calls and things. Can hear some weavers calling. Hello Ray, you're wondering about the iconic trees that we find here in the Mara and what they're called. Ray, there are two main species that you probably noticed. One is a Balanites aegyptia and the other is a boskia or shepherd's tree. Now they're the sort of flat-topped typical trees that you find here in the Mara, and they're not, interestingly enough, the acacias that you'd think. And I think you get those flat top acacias further south, probably into the Serengeti. but it is the Balanites aegyptia and the Boskia or shepherd's tree that are the most common out here in the plains. Then there are hundreds of others that occur in these drainage line areas, but because we have not done a huge amount of walking or investigation of them, I can't tell you a great deal about them. We will, of course, as the season dies down, as the migration season dies down, so we will learn much more about the vegetation of the area and become more au fait with the trees. And here's another vehicle heading towards us. MJ, there's an interesting question from you. You say, oh, they're the lions. You say, MJ, are the areas here, or the treed areas, encouraged to expand so that the land may return to what it used to be? MJ, I'm not sure what you think the land used to be like, but they reckon that 5 million years ago or 2 million years ago or so, this area probably looked very similar to how it does now. There's been very little human, there's some jackal running away. Let's go to the jackal quickly. There's been very little human intervention or formal intervention in the actual management of the landscape in the Serengeti Mara ecosystem, and so there's been no bush clearing or anything like that. Obviously human beings have influenced it on account of the fact that humans have been living here, and in fact our ancestors did quite a lot of evolving around this area. But there is no way of saying that this landscape isn't entirely in its natural state. And remember, of course, that landscapes change continuously all the time. None of them stay the same for any enormous length of time. For a human being's length of time, yes, but over the course of generations or geological time, no landscape will stay the same. I think this is a particularly healthy landscape given the number of animals that it is able to sustain. And so, no, there's no active encouragement to make these open areas more treed or encourage the woody vegetation to grow. I don't think that would be a good idea at all. There's a pink-throated longclaw. You see this biggish tuft next to it? Ooh, can you see it moving there, Ferg?
No.
Well, you can see where I'm pointing, obviously. It's about 20 meters. It's coming closer towards us. Yeah, I don't know how better to tell you. So, yeah, so 15 meters from us, directly at 3 o'clock. There, you got him there. He's in there somewhere. It's the most beautiful longclaw. With a pinkish throat. It's still there. You see it moving there at all, Ferg? Just popping up now. There we are. How gorgeous is that? I think it's a pink-throated longclaw. Might be an orange-throated longclaw. Done so little longclaw spotting of late. We will go to the lions right now. They're not moving anywhere. Long claw. There we go. Rosy-breasted longclaw, that's what it is. A rosy-breasted longclaw. How wonderful is that? I bet that's a new one for some of you. A rosy-breasted longclaw. So named because it has a rosy breast and a long claw. Well done, everybody. And that's the long hind claw. Probably used for fighting and perhaps unearthing insects. This is very gorgeous indeed. Alrighty, we can go and look at some cats now. Flat cats, unfortunately. They look like they've eaten in the last little while. Yes, if we would like to do that, Fergus, we'll do what you want to do, shall we? I was going to get the vultures in the background, but if you want the topi in the background, fine. You know, who am I? Oh yes, look at them. They're definitely on a wild hunting spree. How's that? Now there's Jamie's best friend, the one that's just lain down. She's got very pale fur. There we are, little lioness, very full belly, and so I think these cats have eaten very recently indeed. Yeah, they have enormous fat bellies. I suspect they were lying right here yesterday evening when we were looking for them. Unless they were on a carcass somewhere quite close by. In fact, they must have been. They must have been on a carcass where all those vultures are. Now, Brizza, you in Boston, you've asked a very nice question about prides and their longevity as entities, I suppose. You say, do they go back many generations, or do new prides come into areas quite often? A lot of prides are very old, and some of them, I mean, the Nkuhuma pride, I forget how old the Nkuhuma pride is, but there are some very old prides in the Kruger. You know, they can go back 30 years sometimes. That is quite unusual, though, because generally a pride will have some kind of fate befall it where, you know, they're either taken out by males or they're taken out by disease or something like that. But interestingly, what happens, Brizza, is that unless the entire pride is wiped out, so for example, if this pride was left with one female, the territory would remain almost intact, and it only happens that a pride is replaced in an area when the entire pride disappears, and then, you know, leaves a vacuum, and then another pride might come into the area. So many of these prides go back many, many lion generations. But remember, lion generations are very long, and when they do sort of die out, then another pride will come and take over the territory. But it doesn't happen as often as you might think. But I reckon that 30 years would be a long time for a pride to hold a territory. And of course they split, you know, they split, and they don't join other prides, but they will split up. And eventually those, while let's say the Sausage Tree Pride became 15 lionesses, it might split in two. And those lionesses, when they met up, they would be very friendly to each other, and their boundaries would be pretty fluid, and there'd be some overlap in the territories. But as the generations went on, so you would find that their boundaries became more and more distinct, the lions became less and less familiar with each other, and eventually they would become, well, warring prides, if you like, totally exclusive from each other. Alrighty, we're going to stay here for a while, see if these cats get up and do anything. I think the chances are about as high as, well, I'm not going to say it. Let's go back to Tristan and find out how his search is going.
So, unfortunately, my comms have just fallen out. I can hear Louise a little bit, but I didn't exactly get what James was saying. So just give me 2 seconds as I fix this quickly. The unfortunate thing is my little earpiece part fell out, which is the way that it goes sometimes. So, let me just quickly fix that. Oh, little earpiece. It's been a torrid month for earpieces for me. I don't know why it's done that, but anyway, these things, like I say, do happen. So there we go. Lou, I should be able to hear you a lot better now, and we should be absolutely perfect in terms of what's going on. So what happens is that little plastic part just kind of falls out, and sometimes it's a little tough to hear what's going on. But anyway, glad James found his sausages this morning, and hopefully he'll find more sausages for breakfast a little bit later when he goes home. If it's anything like it is here, it's going to be well worth a hot breakfast. It's still very cold on this side of life, and not really much happening. There's very few animals around. We've passed 1 or 2 impalas, but otherwise it's been very slow. Even the birds have not been out. I thought we might see, with weather like this, we might see a lot more birds of prey down on the trees and resting, because there's very few thermals around, but even they aren't to be found. Maybe they're hiding themselves away. Now, I remember last night I saw that Ali had a mystery bird on her sunset safari, and I was having a little look at it, and my first thought when I saw it was maybe it was a booted eagle, and I was kind of having a look, and I sent the photos to some of the guys that I know that are very good birders, and they ummed and ahed about it as well, and they asked me if there was any sign, or any photos of it flying, and obviously it was a very brief glimpse, and the photos weren't really clear at all. And so I know a lot of you have been wondering exactly what the idea is on that bird, and so from what I can gather and from the consensus coming back is that it is a fledgling Wahlberg's eagle. Now, why that Wahlberg's eagle is here and how they bred so early in the year without us noticing, well, that's the next question, which I have asked them as to why there would be a Wahlberg's eagle at this time of the year that's already been breeding. So that was the first question, but they reckon that it's a Wahlberg's eagle, and those fleckings around the throat area. Sorry, I thought I spotted something, but it's just a nest in a tree. I thought it was maybe a leopard lying on a branch. But they reckon that those are the down feathers and the basically adolescent feathers, for lack of a better word, that are slowly but surely growing out, and so the white is what its true color is, and those will eventually settle down. So they think it is a very, very young Wahlberg's eagle that's around. But like I say, my question is, how is it bred already if we're only just seeing the Wahlbergs arriving back here and they breed down here? Where did that bird come from, and how did it breed, and how is it already flying in such a short space of time? Or did we just not notice a pair of Wahlberg's eagle raising a chick for the last month? In fact, maybe even longer. So it's an interesting one and an interesting conundrum. They said to me it's really tough because of the way that it's sitting. There's no distinct features of the Wahlberg's eagle, so there's no crest, can't really see the tail nicely, and so they're not 100% sure, but if they had to put their money on it, it would be a young Wahlberg's eagle. So there we go, for those of you that were interested in the bird mystery from yesterday. Interesting that there was also divided opinion amongst quite a few different birders, and the guys were just kind of debating it, and it just goes to show that also birding is not as clear cut as we all think it is, and that it's very easy just to identify even big birds like that, particularly the ones that have so many color morphs. So booted eagle, Wahlberg's eagle, steppe eagle, tawny eagle, all of these birds have lots of different variations, lots of different color morphs, and even mixes of the color morphs, and it makes it tough to identify them sometimes. And so you've got to just use a number of different factors and kind of put them all together to try and get some sort of semblance of an idea. Now, I wonder if our little steenbok is going to stop for us. There's a little steenbok that has just run out of the bush as I came around the corner. So there it is. It's unfortunately quite obscured by branches and stumps and various other things, but it is a male steenbok, so I'm sure his female must be somewhere close by. Remember, they are monogamous, so once they pair together, that's them together for life, unless the predators exhaust the relationship, in which case they will then seek out another mate. So they won't just stay on their own. Even if they do lose their mate, they will seek out another one if they have to. But very typical steenbok behavior, once it's been seen, is to try and get somewhere where it can either camouflage very well, as it's done right there, or where it can get some sort of long grass that it can lie down, and that's where their name comes from at the end of the day, is that they'll lie down, they'll tuck their heads down, and they have this little rounded back, and that reddish coloration looks like just like a stone or a sort of rock in the grass, and becomes very, very difficult to notice them. You can see if you drove past now, you would have no idea that there was a little antelope hiding out behind that bush. So very clever color pattern and very clever way that they move around. And steenbok, I find, are quite sneaky little things. They know exactly what's going on, and I've seen them hiding from leopards multiple times. We saw the other day when Shadow was hunting them, like getting into little places and just ducking down a bit, and Shadow completely missing them and walking straight past. So they are very good at just hiding in plain sight, much I suppose like a leopard is, and they have to be, because everything hunts them at that size. Riti, you're asking how animals react to season changes. Well, obviously there's going to be a lot different sort of pattern of movement. At the moment, we know that a lot of our animals are pretty much wake up, feeding while it's still cool in the antelope species, and then towards water late in the morning, and then again in the afternoon. Cats hanging around water points because they know that's where the density of game is. As we start going into our wetter season, so water will be all over the place and spread around, and that then spreads the prey animals. Also the predators then have a different routine. They won't spend as much time around big water holes. You'll still see them every now and then there, but really not as much time at all, and they'll kind of go in when they have to and drink and then maybe move off, but they'll be able to find water all over the place. And so we find that the predators' movements change quite a bit, and so does the prey animals. They tend to hang around in areas where maybe there's better grazing that they haven't overutilized during the dry winter period, close to big water holes, and so they shift off into other areas, and they'll still be able to find little puddles and little wallows that they can use for drinking and various other things. So the sort of movement of animals changes a little bit. You'll find things like buffalo and elephants will spend longer periods in places because of the vegetation that then grows. So an elephant herd can come in here in summer, lots of rain, everything's grown, lots of grass, and they can spend a lot longer feeding because there's not that finite resource that they're exhausting very quickly. So we tend to find that the movements are slightly different. Everything doesn't move from water point to water point. They tend to be a lot more spread out in the way that they do things. But still no sign of any footprints for Shadow and the cub. I was checking down this way just in case. We know she spends time here, and the last time she was seen was crossing south, directly south of where I am now. So if she is going to come back, it would have been somewhere here last night. Obviously she could have, and the rain's come down and washed it away, and she could be sitting on a kill somewhere inside here. We're not going to know, unfortunately, and this is the tough part about rain, is once it's rained, and if a predator has moved prior to that, or even any animal that has moved prior to that, and the rain falls, very difficult then to know where it is, and why in summer we don't see leopard and lions nearly as much as they kill something. Let's say a leopard kills an impala inside here, the footprints get washed away. I'm never going to know that there's a leopard inside there until such time as it finishes and comes out again, because in summer there will be water somewhere inside this section that she can go and drink without even crossing a road, or he can drink without even crossing a road. So it makes it a little bit harder, but it's okay. Like I say, it's worth it because we inherit a lot of other things. And I've just been driving along checking all the marulas, and I think this marula here, I just want to make double sure. Senzo, if you can punch in on the branches for me on the marula directly in front. But I want to just have a double check and see if excuse me, some of the buds are starting to come out. Just go to the top for me, higher. Thought maybe I saw, no, not yet. Maybe you're on the wrong marula. To the left. There we go, that one at the back there. Do you have little leaflets coming out? Looks like it, doesn't it? Looks like the start of some of the leaves. There we go. So you can see our marula leaves are just starting to grow. So those were, I saw them, I think 2 or 3 days ago we started to see some of them, but it's quite noticeable now. As I'm looking along to most of the marulas, I can actually see the leaves just starting to come out. And soon we'll have marulas with big, lush green crowns, which is exciting. And there's something about seeing budding trees that fills one with, I don't know, hope and excitement. I always like seeing it. It's a sign of change and a sign of lots of interesting things to come. So really enjoy seeing this. And we know that some of the birds have even been feeding off the flowering marulas. Some of them have got flowers as well. And we saw Oriel going to town on a marula the other day and drinking up all the nectar. So become a lot of activity will be happening around them. Now, interestingly as well, is that these plants will be either masculine or feminine. So the flower will either have a masculine part to it or a feminine part to it, and they'll require cross-pollination from both insects, birds, and various others that will feed off the male flower and then go to the female flower, and that's how they then produce fruit, which is pretty interesting. Right, well, now we're going to carry on and head our way towards Chitwa, try and get an update on what exactly has been going on. And while we do that, let's go back to Taylor Mack in the Mara and see what she's been up to the last